Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, legal eagles, luminaries, and learners. Welcome from Global Institute of Law, Oxford. My name is Zubair, and today we have a very important guest with us. He does not need any introduction in scholarly circles, but I'll nevertheless introduce him. His name is Professor Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmed, who's Professor Emeritus at Stockholm University. He has published several books and so many research articles. His main research remains on South Asian history. He has published several award-winning books that has been translated in several languages. His recent book is about Jinnah. So Jinnah hovers across South Asia even after his death more than 70 years later. And his latest book makes unique argument, introduces a new perspective about Jinnah based on existing literature and some new archival work. So over to you, Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zubair Abbasi. Thank you very much for this invitation. You want me to present my book on the theme we agreed, or you are going to ask me questions?
Sir, you speak for 40 minutes
yes.
or whatever.
For about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Since this is a global network of scholars of law, I thought it would be worthwhile presenting my talk in terms of the ideas of a nation, the rights of citizens in a state in general, and in an Islamic state or a Muslim majority state. I need not remind this august audience that colonial India was constituted by myriads of religious communities, sects, cults, ethnicities, castes, and linguistic groups. The Hindus constituted a majority of some 70%, while Muslims were about 25%, with concentration in the northwestern and northeastern zones of India, but with about 1/3 of them dispersed in the rest of India. Then there were Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, Jews, and tribal people. From the second half of the 19th century, but especially from the beginning of the 20th century, considerable discussion took place among thinkers, ideologues, leaders, and theologians as to whether all Indians constituted one nation or two nations or several nations. Among both Hindus and Muslims, the two-nation theory found proponents, but with the British very much in control of India, such ideas had little relevance politically. The book is structured in a way that the role of the British is not considered as that of arbiters, but as a party to the unraveling of the freedom struggle, where they made their own moves calculated to prolong their stay in India forever, if possible. And they were confronted in this primarily by the Indian National Congress, which successively over the years started demanding that power be transferred to Indians, elected representatives of the Indians, and it claimed that it was a party open to all Indians. So it was a secular, inclusive, pluralist party of all Indians. The British had started introducing representative institutions based on the notion of responsible government, but kept the right to vote strictly confined to the upper classes, up until 1935, which is the Indian Act. Only also in the 1935 Act, only 10 to 11% of the total population of India was given the right to vote. So just imagine when these institutions of representation were introduced, how narrow and confined was the electorate, people with the right to vote. They were people of property, of social status, and who had high education. This expanded over time. Simultaneously, while they introduced representative institutions and practices, they conceded separate electorates and weightage. Separate electorates would mean a community having its candidates and members of that community voting for them. So for Muslims, there would be Muslim candidates and Muslims would vote for them. And weightage was giving them representation in excess of their percentage of the population. So these were the two strategies the British developed to counter an all India level confrontation with Indians organized in the Indian National Congress. So in 1909, the Muslims were granted both separate electorates and weightage. Then in 1919, in the province of Punjab, which was a Muslim majority province, the Sikhs, who were a minority of 13.2%, were also granted separate electorates and were given weightage. So about 18% of the seats were given to them, and the number of the Muslims was reduced. Okay. And then in Bengal, seats were reserved for the Europeans and Anglo-Indians. So everywhere the structure was, there was representation, there was a narrow suffrage, the right to vote, but different groups of people were classified as objective entities, Muslims being one, Sikhs being another, and then, as I said, Europeans and Anglo-Indians. How did the Indian National Congress, which was at that time the main party leading the freedom struggle, it started as a petitioning party after 1920, when Mahatma Gandhi became its leader. It became a mass party open to all Indians. But since Muslims were given separate representation, the Muslim presence in the Congress was constant, but not as completely as their numbers, because the Muslims were encouraged to contest elections, but as a separate community. Okay. In 1928, a committee was formed called the Motilal Nehru Committee, and later on a report was published by it, in which all political parties in India and almost all religious ethnic communities were also invited, including, of course, the All India Muslim League, which had been founded in 1906. From the beginning, the Muslim League became the platform for specialized Muslim interests, communal interests, vis-a-vis other communities of India. So, but the leader of the All India Muslim League at that time, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he boycotted the deliberations of the committee, demanding that they first accept some of his demands, like 1/3 representation for Muslims and separate electorates, which this committee was not willing to accept. So what did they recommend? The Motilal Nehru report declared that there would be no state religion and men and women were to enjoy equal rights. Elections were to be held on the basis of universal adult franchise. There were to be no separate electorates or weightage, but the minorities could have seats reserved for them in proportion to their population strength. Another thing proposed in the Nehru report, it was meant to be the future constitution of India, okay? That Hindustani, a North Indian language, was to be the national language of India with two official scripts, Devanagari, in which Hindi is written, and Persian Urdu, in which Urdu is written. Hindustani, when spoken, is 95% the same as Hindi and Urdu spoken by the common people. It was also agreed that since South Indians did not understand Hindustani, English will continue to be used in official purposes. Okay. The Motilal Nehru report was signed by Indian leaders belonging to different religious communities. Among Muslims who signed were Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Dr. Mukhtar Ahmed Ansari, Ali Imam, and from Punjab, it was Maulvi Abdul Qadir Kasuri, the grandfather of Pakistan's former foreign minister, Khurshid Mahmood Kasuri. So there were Muslims who wanted the Nehru report to be accepted, but that could not happen because the Muslim League took a stand against it. We now quickly move forward to 1935, the Government of India Act, which called elections in 1937. That's the turning point where Jinnah, who was up until now, let me briefly introduce Jinnah. Jinnah joined politics in 1906. He belonged to a tiny Muslim sect of Ismaili Shias. He was born allegedly or believed to be in Karachi, but later on established himself in Bombay. But from 1906 to 1920, he was an ardent Indian nationalist. And in my book, I have given ample proof of that. Then from 1920 to 1937, Jinnah is a Muslim communitarian. I have not seen anyone demarcate Jinnah's career the way I have done. I have argued that during this period, Jinnah developed the theory of that there was no Indian nation. He went against the Congress idea, which he once supported. And instead, he said that India comprised of several nationalities. And among the nationalities he identified were Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, the Dravidian people of the South, and the so-called untouchables of the Hindu group who call themselves now Dalits. So he said these are the main nationalities, and then there are different other groups. There is no one Indian nation. Therefore, if there was no one Indian nation, he was willing to accept a very loose Indian Union in which all real powers were vested in the provinces, and the center was given charge of defense, foreign affairs, and some other issues with limited right to raise taxes for it. This was not acceptable to the Congress. The Congress in the Motilal Nehru report had proposed an Indian federation with a strong center. The argument for the strong center was that a country with the complexities of the Indian society and all other varieties, language, culture, and so on, you need an effective central government to promote education, fundamental rights, economic development, and other such related subjects. So they wanted a center which was effective and had original jurisdiction to raise money for these inputs like development, education, currency, banking, and all that. Jinnah would not accept that. Then comes the 1937 election. And in that election, the Congress triumphed in the Hindu majority provinces and in Northwest Frontier province, where 93% of the population was Muslim, but the local party there, the Khudai Khidmatgar, they were allies of the Congress. So 8 provinces had a clean sweep of the Congress. The Congress did put up Muslim candidates, members of the Congress party, to contest the reserved Muslim seats. But I think out of 108 seats, it won about 56, of which half the seats were in the Northwest Frontier province. So the Muslims of India had not voted for the Congress. On the other hand, they did not vote for the All India Muslim League, which claimed to be the representative of Indian Muslims. For example, in the northwestern Muslim majority provinces, it was completely routed. In Sindh, it did not win a single seat. In Punjab, where there were 84 reserved Muslim seats, it won 2, which became 1 when Raja Ghazanfar Ali Khan crossed the floor and joined the Punjab Unionist Party. You see, in the Muslim majority provinces, there were regional parties dominated or led by Muslims. So, of course, the Punjab Unionist Party won. Then, in the Northwest Frontier, as I said, not a single seat was won by the Muslim League. In Bengal, where there were also 84 seats, 40 were won by the Muslim League and 44 by the Krishak Shramik Party, which was a local Bengali party at that time in opposition to the Muslim League. In the Hindu majority provinces, the Muslim League did well, but did not win a majority anywhere. So one can say that the Muslim League was not popular among Muslims of the majority provinces. It had some support in the Muslim minority provinces, in the Hindu majority provinces, but not where Muslims were concentrated, in the Northwest and Northeast. Here, I think, is the turning point. Congress had in 1936 declared that if in a future free India without the British, the Zimidari system, the big land holdings will be abolished. The peasant will provided relief, including ownership, and the Indian society and economy will be restructured radically in light of the Soviet model of socialist development. Now, I think such a drastic statement immediately set alarm bells ringing all over India. There were princes of about nearly 600 states, princely states, who didn't like it. The Muslim landlords, Muslims were either landlords or they were peasants and artisans. The middle class, educated, professional, largely was Hindu upper caste. The commercial interests in India and some industrial interests were dominated by the Parsi minority or Hindus. The Muslims were represented only in small businesses and commercial enterprises, but not in areas where the Muslims were in a majority. These were dominated by Hindus and Sikhs. The Congress then makes a statement that there are only 2 powers in India, the British and the Congress. In the light of the election which it had won, Jinnah then, who was the leader of the Muslim League, retorted that there were 4 powers in the subcontinent: the British, the Congress, the Muslim League, and the princes. So he sort of confronted the Congress claim that there were only 2 powers. Congress formed ministries in 7 and then 8 Northwest Frontier, where the Khudai Khidmatdars, 8 provinces, where they introduced debt relief for the peasantry and carried out and, released many political prisoners. But the Muslim League started a campaign that the Congress ministries were targeting Muslims. And 2 reports were published, the Pirpur report and the Sharif report, claiming to represent cases of oppression of Muslims. Now, I need not point out that the main confrontation at that time was between the British and the Indian National Congress, which in 1929 at Lahore, my hometown, had demanded complete independence for India from British rule. The Muslim League was an important party of the Muslim elite, but was yet not a mass party. The Congress had become a mass party from 1920, open to all. So the British governors, all of them in the Hindu majority provinces where there were Congress governments, in their reports, and I've given them in the book, say that the Muslim League allegations are unfounded. There is no basis for accusing the Congress governments of victimizing Muslims. Lord Linlithgow, the Viceroy, also came to the same conclusion. I've quoted all that in my book, and that's not what we are told in Pakistan. But after you reading the book, maybe you'll have another opinion about it. Okay, then what happens is the Muslim League starts campaigning that in a free India dominated by Congress, there will be Hindu Raj, that Hindu imperialism will start oppressing, persecuting Muslims. And Jinnah is on record, and I've quoted him, saying that Islam will be annihilated, destroyed, removed, eradicated. And Muslims will be obliterated. Obliterated means the same, eradicated, completely eliminated, So these were some of the fears generated among the Muslims. In 1937-38, there were by-elections in which, for the first time, the Muslim League and Mr. Jinnah let some of the Muslim ulema who were supportive of the Muslim League use the Islamic card, saying that we want a Pakistan for Muslims, a state for Muslims, where Islamic law will prevail. On the other hand, the Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Hind, which was the main party, Deoband party, its main leadership supported the Congress. And here is an important discussion which took place between the head of the Congress party, of the Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Hind, a Sunni Orthodox party, Hussain Ahmed Madni. He took the position that in Islam, wataniyat, loyalty to the land or to the homeland, is permissible, and you can form a broad front of all people who live in that territory to drive out an oppressive imperialist powers. This was attacked by Allama Iqbal. Allama Iqbal's position was that to suggest that Muslims could develop a sense of territorial nationalism was anathema, that it was a sin. Muslims are loyal only to their faith. So the Muslim community is known by its faith and not where it lives and what trees and mountains and rivers surround them. This is what Iqbal took as the position. Let me now problematize this quickly. You see, each form of nationalism is unique, but as a social scientist, we try to classify them into essential features. And I have proposed that there are two ways of doing it: territorial nationalism and ideological, cultural, ethnic, religious nationalism. So on the one hand, what is territorial nationalism? That all those who live within a territory are entitled to equal rights as individuals, as free members of a free nation. But the other model, which is ideological or cultural or based on descent, blood, or religion confines the rights collectively only to those who belong to that group. So let's say in a territory like the UK, a cultural nationalism would be that only Anglican Christians are members of the British nation, and they are entitled to full voting rights, civil rights, social rights. The others have lesser rights. But I think the UK system now, at least, is inclusive, territorial. Once you become an Indian, British national, you are entitled to the same rights. And some of the Pakistanis have almost reached the office of the Prime Minister. At least they have been members of the Central Cabinet, and the Lahore and the London mayor is a Pakistani origin person. How is this possible? Because of territorial nationalism. So territorial nationalism was the Congress model. Iqbal's position was that no, it's not territory, but faith. But Jinnah, up until then, was skeptical about all these things. After the Congress threatened that there are only two forces in India, and then came up with its idea of the dissolution of Zimidari and so on, Jinnah could then, he said that no, I'm going to henceforth organize Muslims as a nation and tell them that we want a separate state. So here is a transformation of Jinnah. He latches on to the two-nation theory, saying it's no longer nationalities, it is no longer one nation. Now it is two main nations in India, the Hindus and the Muslims. And then there are other groups, smaller groups. But he says that these two nations are entitled to independent sovereign states. And this theory, the two-nation theory, is spelled out by him in very great details on the 22nd of March 1940 at Lahore in his presidential address at the annual session of the All India Muslim League. On the 23rd, then the Lahore resolution was moved, where it was demanded that Muslim states be independent and sovereign in northeastern and northwestern zones of India, where they were in a majority be created out of a partition of India. What were the British doing to all this? You know, for them, all ideas of nationalism and free India and a partition were problematic. How to deal with them? They had wanted to hold on to India, but something, drastic happened in 1939. The Second World War broke out, and this is on the 1st of September. On the 3rd of September, Viceroy Lilithgow commits India to the war. The Indian National Congress retorts by saying that the British should transfer power to the elected representatives of the people of India, and we as a free nation may then decide to fight fascism in the interest of democracy. But as long as we are ourselves a colony, how can we fight for the freedom of people? We are unfree ourselves. Now, this was a theoretically interesting argument, but realistically a fatal mistake. Why? For the British, holding on to India during the war was crucial. 2.5 million soldiers that they recruited from India, from where will they get all these troops if India were given freedom? And why should they give freedom? The British had no idea of leaving India. I quote in 1943, when the second last Viceroy came to India, and Lord Linlithgow handed power over to him, to Lord Wavell. He told him, we are here for another 30 years. So 1943 means they were still hoping to be in India till 1973. And then they will decide whether India should be a dominion or an independent state. There was no commitment, but the war now restrained their ambition. So what happens? Congress makes this, serves this ultimatum. Lilithgow now wants to find a counterweight to counter the Congress. And Mr. Jinnah goes and meets Lilithgow and he says, look, now you must realize the importance of the Muslim community. So we are willing to support you in the war effort. And Jinnah then subsequently helped recruit Muslims from all over India into the British Indian Army. But he said that at the end of the war, the Muslims should be granted the right of self-determination in those areas where they were in a majority. Lilithgow didn't have a free hand to give him a full commitment, but he encouraged Jinnah then to come out with a declaration. So the declaration was the 22nd speech and the 23rd Lahore resolution. What do the Muslims want? They want a separate state. The Congress commits another major blunder. In 1942, it gives the call known as the Quit India movement, telling the Brit that we should organize an uprising of the people all over India and force the British to leave. Why did the Congress do it? Because the Japanese were involved in the war. There was a war in Europe with Hitler and Italy, but in Southeast Asia, the Japanese were fighting a war and they were winning. So the Congress maybe felt that the British are going to be defeated. So they said, leave India and we will defend India then against all aggression. Now, Lord Lilithgow, who was in 1942, this happened, August, he was Viceroy, he ordered a crackdown, and the crackdown was very effective. Let me point out something I have not said in this. Who administered British orders? Our people. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, all were employed by the British. And the truth is, until the end of when they left, many people were loyal to the British for different reasons. There was caste, there was religion, there was sect, and there was subsect, and there were economic interests, and there were princely states, and there were princes, and Hindu nationalists like the Hindu Mahasabha, the RSS, the Majlis-e-Ahrar in Lahore, Punjab, the Khaksars of Punjab. There were all these political parties with different agendas, operating at the same time. So now the problem was, having made this declaration, what will happen to those Muslims who would be left behind in India? Would there be a transfer of power, transfer of populations as well? This was not what the Muslim League wanted. In the Lahore resolution, it came up with the hostage theory, that those Hindus and Muslims who would be left in Pakistan would be treated the way Muslims are treated in India by the Indian government. It's called the hostage theory, that if my group is left somewhere, I as a state claim to represent their interest. Although in the modern world, this hostage theory has proved to be totally useless. Pakistan has not been able to do much really when Muslims are mistreated in India, or let's say the Hindus in Pakistan and so on. So anyhow, this was the hostage theory. Then on the 30th of March 1941, Jinnah comes to Kanpur, in the Hindu majority provinces. I think Kanpur is in either UP or Madhya Pradesh, one of these places. And the Muslims then of that city said, what will happen to us? The Lahore resolution talks about Muslim states in the northwest and northeast. What would happen to us? And Jinnah is on record saying that I will make 2 crore, 20 million Muslims taste martyrdom and get smashed in order to get 7 crore Muslims or 70 million Muslims liberated from the rule of Hindu India. Now, that's up to you if this is a sensible and convincing argument to leave such a large number, one third. Actually, he gave the wrong numbers. It should have been 30 million or 3 crore left in India, as it turned out to be, and 60 million in northeast and northwest of the Indian subcontinent. But this is what he said. And so wherever he went, he told the Muslims, look, you are always going to remain a minority, but don't stand in the way of the liberation of your co-religionists. Let us become free, and then as a strong nation, we would guarantee your, I mean, these were some of the things he mentioned, okay? The Quit India movement is crushed. The British are able to assert their authority again, and the whole Congress leadership, including city and town level and mohalla level leadership, all are sent to jail. So suddenly, the Congress is gone from the political scene, and from August 1942 till June 1945, they all sit in jail. And in these 2 years, then Muhammad Ali Jinnah relentlessly, unflinchingly, uncompromisingly goes around everywhere in India telling Muslims that creating Pakistan is an absolute existentialist necessity of Muslims. And he tells the Muslims of the Hindu majority provinces, you should be able to make sacrifices for your co-religionists. In 1944, the new viceroy, Lord Wavell, he took over in 43. He releases Gandhi to go and talk to Jinnah to see if they can settle their differences. The Congress wanting a united India with a strong center, and the Muslim League now officially wanting a partition of India to create Muslim states or generically one state, Pakistan, okay? The negotiations take place over 14, 15, 20 meetings. I mean, people count it different way. Gandhi offers that, okay, after the war, when the British have gone, we can have a plebiscite held in the northeast and northwestern parts of India, where people who live there can vote if they want to live in Pakistan or not. And what he means is the people means Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs. So let's say if in the whole of India, the Muslims are a minority, but on the basis of them being a majority in the northeast and northwest, they claim separate statehood as a nation, then the same principle would be applicable to the Hindus and Sikhs living in those Muslim majority areas where they constituted a majority, and the Muslims were not in the majority. So in the Gandhian system, the Hindus and Sikhs would have the right to vote in Punjab and in Bengal if they wanted to be part of Pakistan or they wanted to be part of India, which would mean then that if India is partitioned to create Pakistan, then Punjab and Bengal will be partitioned, and the non-Muslim majority parts of those two provinces will be given to India. This was the logical sort of, but Jinnah refused. He said that in such a plebiscite, only Muslims will have the right to vote, which was not acceptable to the Congress. Then there is a Shimla Conference. We can't go into it. It's on record that Jinnah wrecked the Shimla Conference because he refused to accept that the Indian National Congress could nominate a Muslim to be a member of the Viceroy's executive council, which Wavell wanted to create. And the Indians wanted Maulana Azad, who was the president of the Congress, to be part of that. Jinnah refused. He said only the Congress Muslim League has the right to nominate a Muslim. And the Congress could not accept it because it would mean that the Congress was a Hindu party. This is what Jinnah wanted, that Congress is a Hindu party. The few Muslims there, he called Abul Kalam Azad a poster boy of the Congress. This is also quoted in my book, saying that by being in the Congress, you are a renegade to Islam and Muslims. Anyhow, in 1945, the Shimla Congress fails. Then in this July, the same year, an election is held in the UK, and Churchill, who won the war, is defeated, and the Labour Party comes to power. The Labour Party realizes that the British economy is in shambles. It doesn't have the capacity to hold on to India, and there was American pressure to give India its freedom. So in these circumstances, they called elections for India to find out what did the people want. The Congress contested the elections on the basis of a united India with a united federal India with a strong center. The Muslim League contested the elections on a program of a partitioned India to create Pakistan. Pakistan consisting of West and East Pakistan. Later on, it became one state, only in April 1947. At that time, there was idea of a Muslim Pakistan in West Pakistan and one in East Pakistan. Okay? And the Sikhs of Punjab contested the elections that if Pakistan comes into being on the basis of religion, they will insist that the Hindu Sikh majority districts of the Punjab, and there were 12, should be separated and given to India or to a Sikh state. The elections produced a clear mandate for both Congress and Muslim League, and in the Punjab also for the Sikhs. The reserved Muslim seats as seats for the whole of India were, some say 494, some have counted it to 503, of which the Muslim League won, I think, 442 or 444. So it was a clean sweep. Regarding Congress, out of 500 reserved seats, general seats open to everyone, it won more than 900 seats. And then there were regional parties which also won. The 6 Panthik parties won all the 23 seats. So there was a polarized election result now. What to do? The British were now planning to transfer power, but do it in a way that their strategic interest in the subcontinent, they still hope to be a great power. You know, they were a great power until the beginning of the Second World War, and they wanted to retain that role in some way, and holding on to India through some treaty was strategically important for them. So they came up with the idea of a cabinet mission plan, which conceded many things to the Muslim League, like a center limited to just what the Muslim League wanted, foreign affairs, defense, and communications, and taxes for these 3 services. All the rest were given to the provinces. Then some more things were added, that every 10 years, 3 groups were created. The Hindu majority A group provinces, the Muslim majority Northwestern B group provinces, and the Muslim majority C group in the eastern parts of India. So there were 3 groups. Every 10 years, the groups could decide to leave the union and become independent, either as a group or individual provinces. The third thing the British introduced was that the princely states would be free now, 600 almost, to decide to be part of India or Pakistan or to remain independent. The Congress rejected, saying that you can't have an India in which so many uncertainties were included. The Muslim League originally rejected the cabinet mission plan because it didn't concede Pakistan, but then accepted it, saying that the possibility of Pakistan has been included by the 10-year clause, and we will work in this Indian Union all the time to create Pakistan. So these were the two positions. Then Wavell was called back because he failed to maintain law and order. There was direct action call given by Jinnah when the Wavell invited Nehru to form a government, interim government. Jinnah boycotted it, but later in October 1946, he joined it, But by that time in Calcutta, because of his direct action call, about 10,000 people were killed, Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs. That spread to Bihar, where one-sided massacre of Muslims took place, 5 to 7,000. Then in Noakhali in East Bengal, there was a massacre of Hindus, 500 to 1,000 or whatever. In Bombay, there were Muslim-Hindu riots. Then in December 1946, the Hindus and Sikhs of Hazara district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa were attacked and thousands were uprooted and they came to the Punjab. Then in Punjab, the Muslim League launched its direct action in January 1947, which ended with the elected government constituted by the Punjab Unionist Party, Congress, and the Sikhs. The Muslim League had won 73 seats out of 84 reserved. The rest of the seats were won by the Punjab Unionist Party, but they could then get support from the Congress, which had 50, and 23 from the Sikhs, and then the scheduled castes and others also supported the formation of this coalition government. The Muslim League brought it down in February. The Chief Minister of Punjab, Sir Khizar Tiwana of the Punjab Unionist Party, resigns on the 2nd of March. On the 3rd of March, a call by the Sikh leader to ensure that Pakistan doesn't come into being is given. On the 4th, rioting starts in the Punjab, and then the Punjab is engulfed through communal riots, which end up in an ethnic cleansing of the two parts of the Punjab. 4.5 million Hindus and Sikhs pushed across the border into the Indian East Punjab, and 6 million Muslims pushed into Pakistan. I think about 800,000 Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs were also killed. Before I come to the final words, because we have to talk about Pakistan, the last viceroy who comes is Lord Mountbatten. Mountbatten talks to the Indian leaders and decides that partition is the only way forward. Earlier, 20th February 1947, the British government had announced that they will transfer power to Indians in a united or partitioned India by June 1948. Now, Mountbatten announces the 3 June partition plan, where the transfer of power is brought forward to mid-August 1947, which is in less than 11 weeks. And it was laid down that Punjab and Bengal assemblies will vote whether they want to partition their provinces or keep them united and join Pakistan. The process was that the Hindu and Muslim districts of Bengal were created into 2 groups, and in Punjab, the Muslim 17 districts and 12 Hindu 6 districts were constituted into 2 groups. If either group voted for partition, then the provinces would be partitioned, and they did vote, the Hindus and Sikhs. So whereas the Muslims or Muslim League and Jinnah wanted India partition on the basis of religion, the Congress then supported this and had Punjab and Bengal partition. And out of the partition came the horrific rioting, communal rioting, 1 million people killed, 14 to 15 million uprooted and driven across the international border between the 2 states. What happened to Pakistan then? I'll take about 5 to 7 minutes to sum up. On the 11th of August, 3 days before Pakistan declares itself independence, Jinnah makes a speech to the Pakistan Constituent Assembly where he says that in this great state of Pakistan, Hindus will cease to be Hindus and Muslims will cease to be Muslims, not in a religious sense, but as, because that is a matter of private faith, but as citizens of the state. Now, I have said that if you look at the 7 years of his speeches beginning the 22nd of March, he underlines, over and over again that Hindus and Muslims can never ever be one nation and can never live peacefully in one state. To force them to do it was an invitation to a civil war. And this he said wherever he went. Wherever he went, he said, Hindu Raj is coming. The Hindus will destroy Islam, will destroy Muslims. So we better have our Pakistan. In 1944, he said that when the first Indian converted to Islam, that's when the foundations of Pakistan were laid. I've quoted all these things which are normally not brought forth by other researchers, and I don't know why. Why do they want to conceal or hide these facts? But that's how he mobilized the Muslims. For example, in the 1945-46 elections, the Muslim ulema, the Brelvi, this is, Punjab was a Brelvi stronghold, and the peers were given a free hand to preach an Islamic state, the Islamic utopia. And they told the Muslims that voting for Pakistan is voting for the Holy Prophet, and voting for the coalition government of Khizr was voting for Kufristan. And then they said, that Muslims who vote for against the Muslim League, their nikah, their marriages will be annulled and they will be denied Islamic burial. These were some of the threats given to the Muslims. The results I've already talked to you about. 73 seats out of 84 or 88 were won by the Muslim League. But they didn't have a majority to form the government. Then they started the direct action, and the result was chaos and bloodshed and so on in the Punjab. So now, when he made this speech, people were taken aback because he had been telling them that Hindus and Muslims are two separate states, separate nations. Now to say that Hindus will cease to be Hindus, but that's what the Congress had said in the Motilal Nehru report 1928, that there will be no state religion. Hindus and Muslims will have equal rights and men and women will have equal rights. But now he was, completely extricating himself for the 7 years of what he had been saying. I have said that a lot of noise is raised in the Pakistani liberal leftist circles that this was Jinnah's covenant for a secular India. I've said Jinnah never used the word secular ever in his career. And after Pakistan came into being, I've given the example, already, this is 11th August 1947. On 13th August, one day before the Pakistan celebrated its Independence Day, at a banquet where Mountbatten had come to represent the British crown, Mountbatten said that now you are having your own state and you have great examples of enlightened leaders like Akbar. Jinnah gets up and says, well, Akbar is all right, but our main inspiration is the Holy Prophet, who first defeated the Jews and Christians and then treated them in a wonderful manner. Now, actually, Jinnah was wrong. The covenant was made before the Jews and Christians were defeated. That's the Misaq-e-Medina. And Jinnah was not very good on Islamic history and Islamic law, Sharia, and so on. So whatever reading he had quoted here. Then he established in the Punjab an Islamic Reconstruction Institute to be headed by Allama Muhammad Asad, a Jewish gentleman, Leopold Weiss, who escaped anti-Semitism, became a Muslim, a great scholar of Islam. And he was given the task of advising the government on how to create an Islamic state, an Islamic economy, an Islamic educational system, and an Islamic social order. This is Jinnah telling him. Then on the 24th of January, he goes to the Karachi Bar Association and says angrily, why do people keep asking me, what is going to be your constitution? Our constitution was given 1300 years ago by Islam, and Islam is democratic and it will treat the minorities well. So now you have, and then to the Peer of Manki Sharif and all these people, he had given a free hand to preach Pakistan as an Islamic state. Once Jinnah dies, there is a big discussion. What did Jinnah want Pakistan to be? You can quote his speeches saying he wanted a modern Muslim state, respectful of minorities, protective of minorities. This is one position. It's called Muslim modernism. The second is that many times he promised that Sharia will be the source of law, and he used the word Islamic law many times. He's on record saying that Islam is a complete code of life which covers all sectors of life, and so that this will be applicable in Pakistan. And then you have just one speech, just one 11th August speech, which the liberal left keeps on invoking, saying that actually Jinnah wanted a secular Pakistan. What about all the things he did later on, where secular he never mentioned earlier, never mentioned after that, but he brought in Islam immediately on the 13th of August and then continued mentioning it. The last public function he attended was July 1948. After that he became sick and died quickly, is the founding of the State Bank of Pakistan, where once again he says that we want you to propose a third type of financial economic system, which is neither Western capitalist nor socialist. So all these things, and then he wrote a letter to the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna, saying that please send an Islamic scholar who can come and advise us how to make Pakistan truly Islamic. So all those Islamic features are also there in what Jinnah said and did. He created a Pakistan. After his death, there is a controversy really about what did he want. The Objectives Resolution of 7th March 1949 brought in Islam in a big way, saying sovereignty over the entire universe belongs to God, which he has delegated to the elected representatives of the people of Pakistan. Now, how to interpret that? Is Sharia the supreme law, or the laws made by the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan? There have been 3 constitutions in which what we notice is that more and more Islam has been brought in. The first 2 just talked about all laws being brought in consonant with Islam and Sunnah, and the president being a Muslim. The third one, given by Bhutto, talked about both president and prime minister being Muslims and taking an pledge under an oath, saying that they believed in the finality of the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad, which meant excluding the people who believed that Mirza Ghulam Ahmed was also a prophet. In 1974, the followers of Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, the Ahmadis or Qadianis, were declared non-Muslim by the National Assembly of Pakistan. Then came Zia and brought in all his Islamic law. So the question is, where is the secular agenda of Jinnah? There never was any. Personally, I think he would be horrified to see what Zia did and what many others did, because I think he wanted some sort of a Muslim state where Sharia was the inspiration and justice was done to all in according to the high standards of Islam, and minorities were well treated. I think I'll stop at this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed. We have a very engaged audience. You have kept us motivated and also captivated, I must say, with your elegant presentation. So many questions are being asked. So what I'll do is I'll try to classify them in 2 and 3 groups, and then ask you these questions one by one.
Please do. Please do.
From the people who have actually read your book, which is available on Amazon, it's published in both in Pakistan and in India. So
Yeah.
we are asking about the basic argument or one of the main arguments in your book. That's the relationship between Islam and state.
Yes.
Here you say somebody has actually quoted you that the intermixing of Islam and state is the organic part of the ideological foundation of Pakistan.
True.
And based on this premise, you reach the conclusion that Pakistan could either be one form of Islamic state, either it could be fundamentalist form or it could be enlightened form, but it
Yeah.
can never be a secular state.
Theoretically speaking,
Yes.
practically, if the National Assembly or the people of Pakistan tomorrow decide that they can't continue experimenting and they want a secular state, they can do it. But I'm saying if you look at the ideology and the conceptual theoretical parts of how the Pakistan idea was theorized and campaigned for and won, then within that framework, and then you look at the 74 years of constitution making, law making, each time more of Islam is included. Now, for example, the educational policy makes the whole of Quran, 30 sparas obligatory and hadith literature. So where is the example of anything else being brought into the constitution and law except Islam? So what I say is proven by the facts.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
fantastic. I think that's very interesting. And then the next question is that in your book you describe there wasn't one single vision of Jinnah.
Ji.
Of course, you talk about four phases in Jinnah's political career, but
Yeah.
the question being asked by the audience is about the three versions of Jinnah, Jinnah's Pakistan's version. So would you like to elaborate what were those visions?
Well, I would say, I have not said it, but let me repeat it. I think Jinnah had no consistent, coherent vision about Pakistan. His main genius, his skills were directed at justifying why India should be partitioned. So, in order to win the case as a good lawyer, as a great lawyer, he kept on including more and more sensational features like Hindu Raj is coming, Islam will be obliterated. The first Indian who converted to Islam laid the foundations of Pakistan. You know, all these things are not uh, uh, ideas which the run of the mill Maulvi talks about. This is all Jinnah. That is why I think my book, there is nothing to compare with. All this was there, but nobody used it. I don't know why. I brought it in the public. So, but he gets Pakistan. That's his great achievement against all odds, against the opposition of the All India Indian National Congress, which was the main party which went to jail, campaigned against the British, but in the end, uh, he got Jinnah, he got Pakistan. Okay, a moth-eaten Pakistan, because as I said, parts of Bengal and Punjab were taken and given to India because the logic was built into this thing, religion being the basis of, dividing people. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that,
so what
that's
I'm trying to say is that Jinnah's, once Pakistan comes into being, and I've quoted uh, Dr. Yaqub Bangash, uh, Pakistan's foreign minister, former Sahibzada Yaqub Ali, told him that when he was a young man, he was an aide of Jinnah Sahib, and also Admiral Ehsan. Both were young men. They went to Jinnah and said, "Sir, every day we hear that the Indian Constitution is making progress and new things are being added, but nothing on the Pakistan Constitution is being said. What is the reason?" And he said, "Look, boys, I have made different promises to different people, and I leave it to the Constituent Assembly to work out the Constitution of India." So he transferred the whole responsibility to the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. And the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan has produced 3 constitutions. And then the laws introduced by Zia were given constitutional legitimacy by also the Pakistan National Assembly. So, I mean, how can you dispute this? I mean, so the party which has won is the ideological one. The Muslim modernists have been reduced to nothing. The poor one minister of Nawaz Sharif, I think he wanted to change one word in this oath, and they all got after his blood, and he had to resign and go underground. Salman Taseer only said that this blasphemy law was unsafe, and he was brutally murdered. And also the minority minister, a poor Christian, Shabazz Bhatti, was killed because he also was sympathetic to this poor woman charged with blasphemy. So where is the proof that there is within Pakistan an opinion against all this? No, nowhere. And look at Imran Khan. We thought that he had gone to Oxford and been a great cricketer. He will bring a cosmopolitan stamp to Pakistan. He calls the Taliban, that they have overthrown the shackles of slavery. Well, okay. But then the educational system has now been Islamized in a way even Zia never dreamt of doing it. So who wants to argue with me? On what basis?
Yeah, this is great. But Professor Ishtiaq, I just want to ask you a question that to what extent this is a legitimate question to ask what kind of Pakistan Jinnah wanted?
No,
Jinnah
I think,
wanted,
the thing is, it's a legitimate question and people do it in real earnest. They are eager to find an answer. And they can't because all these different things are being referred to as Jinnahs, and they are. And I'm telling them that indeed Jinnah had no consistent vision. But if you ask me privately what sort of Pakistan he would have preferred, as I said, a Pakistan in which there was elections, democracy, laws were framed in the light of the Sharia, as he said. He probably had read Sayyid Amir Ali's The Spirit of Islam, which is very enlightened. It's a very different Islam than what the mullahs tell us. Huh? So I would say he was a Muslim modernist, but Muslim modernism was a counter to secularism. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the best idea of a Pakistan close to Jinnah would be the 1956 Constitution of Pakistan, if you revive it.
Right, right.
Or I have said there is another formula as well, which is mine, but learned from Turkey. Turkey, we are told, is a secular state, yes, but it's a laicist secular state. What it has done is what the French did after the French Revolution. Ataturk said that Sharia will be removed from penal and civil affairs, but for spiritual affairs like prayers and for burial, the Sharia will apply. So every Turk is entitled to an Islamic burial according to Hanafi Sunni principles. And all state mosques hold worshiping, prayers according to Sunni Hanafi principles. The Alevites are welcome to do it on their own, and others. There is no force on them. But the Turkish state only patronizes Sharia in spiritual matters and in terms of, burial is also spiritual, isn't it? Prayers and burial.
Yeah.
The rest is then left to the state to decide. The weekly khutbah is sent by the Ministry of Ministry of Religious Affairs. And the idea is to encourage people to learn the positive things about Islam, how to serve your community, how to make your, muhalla green instead of all this, sectarianism and sub-sectarianism. Just look at YouTube, how the ulama are demonizing each other. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I would say that's another model. It would still be a modern state which controls Islam. The Maulvis become agents of the state. So you say 96% Pakistanis are Muslims, Shias and Sunnis. So the Shia mosque can continue with the Jafri way, the Sunni mosque can follow the Hanafi or Shafi or Hanbali way, whatever you want, but they should be banned from using the pulpit for political sectarian reasons. So that's also another way of modernizing Islam. I'm very clear. I call it nomocracy. Pakistan is a democracy
Yeah.
where the Sharia laws will be inspiration in some way. That's one. But you can even try the Turkish way of reducing that nomocracy only to spiritual matters.
Yeah.
That's for you to decide.
So we have several questions being asked. So
Yes, please.
so
I'm at your disposal
yeah,
as
thank
long
you
as
very
you
much.
want. As
Yes,
long
thank
as
you
you
very
want.
much.
Yeah.
I think yes. So one question is that the Turkish model in itself is now undergoing drastic changes.
Yes.
Yes.
Now
And
the thing is,
I think the irony is that this whole Wahhabism and Ahle Hadith, and now the Saudi Arab itself has moved on, right?
yes.
It is, yes. So it simply shows that politics is dynamic, right?
But remember, the same thing happened to Christian societies. If
Yeah.
we remember how they fought the wars of religion, they were a million times more bloody than what we have been doing in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And my own understanding is that this radical Islam was promoted by the West, basically to confront those forces in Muslim societies which were secular and socialist minded.
Yeah.
And this was, and so that's a different angle, but we can't discuss everything in one presentation.
Of course. I mean, definitely we shall have a follow-up after
Yes.
read your book. Another question, Amit Koshish is asking, he says, how real was Jinnah's professed fear of Muslim being obliterated in what he called Hindu Raj?
It was all greatly exaggerated. Till the very end, he had Hindu friends, and they came and dined with him and wined with him. This is all on record. This was all politics. I have said that Jinnah did not have a very strong emotional capacity. He took a position and then dealt with it in terms of achieving results. So the best results was to instill fear among Muslims and then make them support Pakistan. Simple as that. I'm sure because once Pakistan came into being, I've quoted his speeches over and over again, pleading to the same Congress government to do its duty and help and save these Muslims. Now, how can you do it? If you believe that Hindus can never be good to Muslims, and it is the Congress party which was bad to him and to the Muslims, how can you then go on your knees and plead with them, take care of the Muslims? Obviously, he didn't believe it. This was just an argument he used.
Someone is pointing out that current Narendra Modi's government is actually proving Jinnah correct.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah. I have said, I didn't have the chance to give the counter. Look, Modi is able to do it. Why? That's the big question. Isn't that the important question? Because at least Nehru, when they say this, they are saying Nehru didn't do it. The early governments didn't do it. Modi is doing it. So we need to explain why Modi. As a social scientist, that's how I will approach, rather in a rhetorical way. Why Modi is doing it? Look at the record. Jinnah Sahab, even after Pakistan came into being, the last time he spoke in a public sort of way was on the 14th of August, 1948. And he says that Pakistan has survived despite all the conspiracies against Pakistan being hashed in India. That's the last speech. So he leaves a legacy of Pakistan suspecting a bad deal from India. In these circumstances, from day one, both sides took what is known as zero-sum positions. Look at Kashmir. What happened? If you want Junagadh, then the ruler of Kashmir accedes to India. What can you do, logically speaking? Who started this by accepting Junagadh. And it's too bad. Then who went into Kalat first? We did. And then India went into Hyderabad. So they follow each other, learning from one another, opposing one another in public forums and in all places. But there was a genuine effort by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I don't know, Dr. Sab, how old you are, but in 1999, I happened to be in Lahore by chance.
Yeah.
And we were all celebrating the Lahore Accord.
Yes.
That now India and Pakistan would learn to live in peace. Atal Bihari Vajpayee had gone to the Lahore Minar and he said that we were opposed to this partition in Pakistan. But now we accept it. And so let's live in peace. And even on Kashmir, there was a considerable understanding how they will deal with it. Poor Vajpayee Sahib goes back and we do Kargil. Then on Nawaz Sharif's private family wedding, newly elected Modi comes to attend that wedding. As soon as he goes back, there is Pathankot done. I think at that point, the legacy of Atal Bihari Vajpayee to seek, even as a Hindu nationalist party, some reconciliation with Pakistan was given up. And they said, now we are going to confront them by the way they have been dealing with us. Because after 1989, we sent Mujahideen into the Indian Kashmir. What about the 26th November terrorist attacks on Bombay and in many other places? That's the only one. So Pakistan has spoiled its own case. And now Vajpayee is no longer a Nehru or a Lal Bahadur Shastri or even Indira Gandhi. He wants to confront Pakistan with an equally hostile Hindu nationalism. And who are the victims? The Muslims of India. So that's my answer.
Fantastic. That's very, very
I'll give one more example. In 1947, when the partition plan was agreed and partition took place, had all the Hindus and Sikhs stayed in West Pakistan, Balochistan, Sindh, Punjab, and the frontier province, their population strength in West Pakistan or Pakistan would have been 21%. But by December 1947, we had hounded them out of Pakistan. So at the end of December 1947, 1.6% were left in Sindh in interior. And to this day, they are 1.6%. Look at India. The Sikhs drove out all the Muslims from East Pakistan, from East Punjab, sorry. And we drove out all the Hindus and Sikhs from West Punjab, okay? But in the rest of India were 9.8% Muslims who would have, if they had been driven out by the Congress governments, would be 35 million. And Pakistan wouldn't last a single day because at that time, West Pakistan's population was only 33 million. So who kept them there and kept them safely? The Congress government under Nehru. Okay. They were 9.8% in 1947. They are 14.2%. So their numbers have increased. It's only now that Modi is doing all that, which we have been doing to our minorities. We have done to the MPs. We got their vote and then we disowned them, rightly or wrongly. I know they have very strange beliefs also. There was a chance to find a reconciliation, but their leadership refused. Then what have we done to the Hindu girls? We take them, convert them, and marry off to our own men. We have burned Christian churches. Have we given any reason for Modi to feel ashamed with what he's doing? No.
great. So fantastic. I think there are so many questions that even if we spend the whole evening, we won't be able to complete them. But this was, I must say, a taster to our panel discussion. I know there is rich discussions about Carlyle, about Max Weber, about Plekhanov, ideas, individuals, ideologies, how they interact. So it's a wonderful book, and I'm sure that for coming days and weeks and even for decades, it will keep making lots of people to think. So I congratulate you on the publication of your book and look forward to interacting with you in future.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you and your network and organization from the deepest recesses of my heart. This has been the best discussion insofar as English is concerned. And it is because I have an academic at the other end, and then we are into law, and a lot of Islam has been brought into this discussion, which shows what this book is all about.
Yeah.
So a lot of the success of today is because of you. Thank you so much.
Very kind.
Thank you, Dr. Zubair Abbasi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.